is it really that important to focus on our sensuality and our sexuality as women? And if so, why is that important? And why is it worth our time? Because that's really where I was sitting a few years ago going like, ugh, I don't know. It's just, is it really that important? Do I have to do this? I'm so busy already. Of course, a part of me wanted to feel more sensual or more connected to that part of myself. But again, it just was like, oh, where am I supposed to fit this in?
Welcome to The Way of the Muse, a podcast for women who want to create richness in every area of their lives, from business and career to lifestyle, relationships, family, purpose, and fulfillment. I'm Gigi Sage.
And I'm Makena Sage. We're a mother-daughter coaching team, and combined, we've spent over 4 decades helping people create their best and most fully expressed lives. If you're ready to step into your bigger dreams with ease, fun, and flow, you're in the right place. Let's get into the episode.
Hello, hello.
Hello. Hi, Makena.
Hi, Gigi. Welcome, everyone, to another podcast episode here on Way of the Muse. Today, we're talking about a topic that we've kind of hinted at in some of the other episodes recently and said, we should really go deeper into that one. And so we've titled it Bringing Sexy Back. How to find your mojo.
Song.
I know. I might have taken a little inspiration from Justin Timberlake. But how to find your mojo and feel turned on again. So this is a very important topic. And I do want to say that this topic is really for anyone. This episode is really for anyone who wants to feel more sexy and turned on in their life, whether you're currently single or in a relationship. And it's also for the person who feels like they've lost any interest in this. They don't really feel like they want to feel that sexy and turned on. It feels like maybe more work than it's worth. Then you are really going to love this episode as well, I promise, even though you might be going, I don't know if that's really for me. And I did want to say, and I'll talk more about this as we go through the episode, that in full transparency, I was that second person for a long time. So this was just not an area that felt like a high priority to me. And so I'll share more about that as we go through today. So.
Yeah. And as you're listening today, also really think about if there's someone in your life that you would love to share this information with, your girlfriends, your sisters, who else do you know that could benefit from this information? And even though it's a really sensitive topic, but it's so important to the overall quality of life and even for health, right? So be sure that to pass this on and share it with other women in your life. That's what's so wonderful about these podcasts is, sometimes maybe you can't talk to somebody about this, but you can say, hey, I just listened to this podcast and I would just love to share it with you. Would you be curious about listening? And that's a great way about sharing information.
Absolutely. Yeah. I feel like that's so much of what we're doing here too, is like, these are topics that I sit around and talk with my girlfriends about, or, things that I want to share with people. And so it's having these episodes that we can really pass along. And I am doing this constantly with other podcasts as well. Just like, oh, you've got to listen to this episode or that episode. So that's great.
You're really good at that. Yeah.
All right. So let's dive in. So again, we see 2 main categories of people when it comes to this topic, and we are going to touch on both today. So the first group, we're going to call them Group A. And this is the group that maybe you really feel like you want to get your mojo back, right? Maybe you used to feel sexier and more turned on, but you've lost touch with this part of yourself and you really want to get it back, but you're probably busy, tired, or both. And we often see this with women who are career women, busy moms, or under a lot of stress and pressure in their life in some way. So again, this is going to be Group A, and this is definitely for you. And then Group B has a lot in common with Group A. But again, the key difference here is that they've lost interest in feeling sexy or sensual or turned on. Maybe if you identify more with this group right now, maybe you've always struggled in this area a little bit. And the older you get, the less important it feels. Or, you may have had it before, but it's just like, oh, it's just not a priority right now, right?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and we often see this with women that get older, as myself, right? Or maybe the kids are out of the house and they've lost that, spark in their relationship, or you're divorced and you just, you're not that interested in that aspect of your life anymore. And it's just kind of become on the back burner.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, Group B can really include the kinds of women we mentioned to Group A, right? So
Yeah.
career women, busy moms. So there's no set categories here. We're just trying to kind of say that this is really for you, no matter how you're feeling about this right now. And like I said before, I identified for many years more with Group B, and I was a busy career woman. I was women, a busy career woman, and I didn't have any kids, but honestly feeling, sexy and turned on felt like the lowest possible thing on my priority list at that time. And you might be, identifying with either of these groups, but you might be, again, single, or you might be currently, in a relationship. Either way. So we will speak to both. And Gigi, you've taught me so much in this area. So I really want to ask you a lot of questions today, as usual, I guess. So I want to start with a question that I was asking myself, a few years ago. And that is it really, it's actually kind of a couple of questions. First of all, is it really that important to focus on our sensuality and our sexuality as women? And if so, why is that important? And why is it worth our time? Because that's really where I was sitting a few years ago, going like, ugh, I don't know. It's just, is it really that important? Do I have to do this? I'm so busy already. Of course, a part of me wanted to feel more sensual or more connected to that part of myself. But again, it just was like, oh, where am I supposed to fit this in?
Yeah. And I remember that's when you were working so hard, right?
Yeah.
And so, first of all, the short answer is absolutely yes. It's incredibly important. And it's important for yourself first before anything else. Your sensual and sexual energy is sometimes referred to as your Kundalini energy, right? And the Kundalini is literally the life force energy that runs all through our bodies. And that's often experienced as a sexual energy. And what happens if there's a blockage anywhere in the body and the energy flow, it's not flowing all the way through, that can have a big impact on your energy and either your health and well-being. And now I'm not just talking about, feeling like sexy or having sex. This is more about when your senses are open and being connected to just that life force, that's that naturally a current flowing through your body when you have that free flow of energy. And we've all felt that at times, right? You have this more connected feeling to all your senses. You really feel life at a very deep level. And of course, you have that more access to feeling sexy and also turned on, and like I said, we've all experienced that at certain times in our life, when after doing something and all of a sudden, we're like, wow, we feel all this energy flow through us.
So you're saying there's Kundalini energy. It's this energy that flows through our body, but there can be blockages to that. But you're saying it's not just sexual energy. So it's this like life force energy. So I guess people probably are thinking about times when they felt more sexual or turned on if they have had those times. But what are you referring to that's maybe not that in terms of feeling that energy moving through your body?
You have other access points. And one of those in our coaching method is we practice what we call the aliveness method. And it's about tapping into your vitality and what brings you alive, which is another way of activating your life force energy within you, because it's not thinking about what brings you alive. It's actually feeling it. Like really, that's where we coach people to pay attention to where are those times where you feel that runs through your body and you feel excited, you feel inspired, you feel this feeling of wanting to get up and conquer the world, but it's an energetic feeling. It's vital.
Yeah. Okay. So Kundalini energy, it's this life force energy. There's this aliveness piece for some people, and then there's a sexual or sensual piece as well. So again, can you just go a little deeper? Like, how are those two connected?
It is, and maybe it would be helpful to think about it as being kind of like a spectrum. So Kundalini energy is not necessarily sexual. It's about being fully awake and alive and tuned in with your senses. And think about it when you're doing something that you love, that really brings you alive. How do you feel? And again, as the listeners, I talk about that. Think about, when are there times where you felt super, super vital, super excited in life? And again, it's in your body. You want to jump up and get out of bed, and McKenna, if you just think about it, what's an example for you in your life?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this one before on the podcast, but probably photo shoots is one of the biggest examples for me. So I love being on camera. I love creating really creative, artistic photo shoots with great photographers. And it's really the whole process, but especially the photo shoot day, right? Because there's the planning and there's the coming up with the concept and really, designing the whole thing. And then you get to the shoot, and then there's this just magic that happens if you're working with really great photographer that can bring your vision to life, and you're co-creating, and it really feels like I go into like a flow state, and I feel so like kind of high afterwards, like on a high, right? Yeah. Just clear and energized and bright and happy. Yeah, it's one of the most peak states, I think, for me.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough.
And then, another way to, if we're talking about spectrum, another way to look at that too is that you're also creative energy, right? So often that too is that turned on feeling comes from when we're experiencing creativity. And these all go together. That's where, when we work with clients around really what brings them alive, often they find it's something that has a creative element to itself, even though it might not be painting or dancing or something like that. And so what that is that's actually life force energy. And now that's the same energy, which is the foundation of the sensual and sexual energy. And the more you tap into that, the easier it is to access a more like turned on state, if that's something that you want to feel more connected to. So does that make more sense?
I think so. I'm just trying to think about that. So if I were doing more photo shoots, you're saying, if I were doing more things like that had me feeling that way, that had me connected to that aliveness energy, that it would be easier for me to access more of the sensual and sexual energy. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. And it would actually be activated in you. So I can give you examples in my career. So one thing is, over the years when I was really traveling and leading workshops in person, and I would travel to Europe and I'd lead my workshops, or I was in New York City. I cannot tell you the number of times after a workshop of leading it with women, and I am walking through the airport, and I have so much attention, and have men talk to me, have men ask me out. I was in New York City one time, and a man got in the elevator with me, and he was one of the founders of Ethic magazine, and he was like, I noticed you from over here. So again, I was on break from a workshop. So during those times, because I was very lit up and very in my flow and in my energy, then that made me super magnetic. And that was that kind of, again, very sensual, sexual energy. It was actually even sexual because it was attractive in that way.
That's so interesting. Yeah. So that's in terms of your magnetism, but then in terms of a woman who's feeling like she's not connected to this in herself, then she would have easier access to it also. Like she would feel more easily connected.
Absolutely. And you have to start paying attention to it. Yeah. And we'll talk a little bit more the actual sexual part of it, right, in a few minutes. But that's where you begin even having the desire to start feeling more sexual, right?
Yeah, it makes so much sense. I mean, if you're in your life and you're bored and you're exhausted all the time and you're, just kind of going through the motions, it is going to be harder to access that. But I could see how having more of that energy and vitality just running through your body in the first place would really help. So I want to go back to the original question, just make sure we've covered it, which was why is this important though? Apart from like someone who really wants this, but there's also, again, people who feel like they don't have a whole lot of interest and they're like, it's just not a priority. It doesn't feel that important to me.
Yeah, well, like I touched on this before, is when we talked about whenever there's blocked energy in your body, then that can become a place of dis-ease and our disease begins, Of course, we don't want to predict anything here, but again, you might often see that different ailments start to come up, and they start coming up because there isn't this healthy, free-flowing, again, energy and movement through your body. Or you can look at it another way. Have you ever had a time in your life where you were feeling like super alive and turned on, and maybe you were even having great sex, you had a great lover, or this was with your partner, and you were just feeling so connected to your body and your sensual energy? I've had that before too, sometimes even like when you go on vacation with a partner and you have that time to relax and unwind, and all of a sudden, there's space and time, right? Then there was likely this sense of vitality in you that was palpable, right? So when you felt that way, when you had those experiences, and you probably felt more inspired and energetic, likely you felt more healthy, your conversations were more deep, more exciting. And the opposite of this would be when you're going through life and you're just feeling a bit numb, you're not feeling connected to your senses. You're just sort of going through the motions and staying like busy, 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 and not truly feeling and sensing life. And, we all have those experiences.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, that one hits really close to home for me because I spent a lot of my adult life feeling that way. I remember when I was much younger, feeling more connected to my body and to my senses. But I think as I got into school or like university, and I was studying really hard and working multiple jobs and just kind of burning the candle at both ends, and then got into my career and I just carried that forward with me. It's like I got less and less connected to that part of myself. And it is like I was less connected to my body. Numb is a good word for it, but also just like, I don't know if the word disassociated is the right word for it, but I was so in my head that it's like, oh, wait, I have a body. You know what I mean? Where it's like, what? Like, I only thought about my body if it was like hurting, or if it was, I don't know, if it was really talking to me loudly, because most of the time I was just going around living my life, right? And working and things like that.
Yeah.
So just to say that I relate, if any of you listening to the podcast have experiences like that, or you've gone through times like that. And if someone, Gigi, is listening and really, again, wants to get their mojo back, or maybe someone like me who hadn't made this a priority, but on some level they're longing to feel it too. And again, that was me. And I have to say that it did take sort of an intervention a little bit. It took you really talking to me about this to tell me that this is really a priority. Before we get into this next part about really how to shift this, I'm curious, Gigi, again, just what would you say to someone who is feeling like this isn't a priority still? They've heard the reasons we've just given, and they're like, yeah, I get it. Theoretically, I can see why this would be important, but it's not quite hitting home, right? Or what did you say to me, some version of that a few years ago to really help me kind of break out of that and make a change here?
Well, I would say, first of all, you have to see what turns you on. And like I said, I don't mean just sexually. Start doing more of what brings you alive, and not just alive in your head, but again, aliveness where you can actually feel that lightness in your body, that inspiration and like softness in your being, where you feel like yourself, those moments where you feel, go back to those things. If that's writing, if that's dancing, if that's skiing, whatever it is, really are aware of those moments where you connect to you. And as I said to you, I think was just, being able to feel completely, because you were numb, right? And being able to access your sensuality and your sexuality would make your life, so much richer. And also your relationship in terms of fully, really, really connecting with your partner and having experiences that, that are available that you can't think of in your mind. You can only feel them in your body. Right. And so
I want to be really honest about when you talked to me about this, what came up and what I felt.
Okay. Yeah.
Because this might come up for people who are listening. So when Gigi would talk to me about this, it was like, first of all, it felt really uncomfortable because I felt like there was something wrong or like I wasn't fully, not a woman, but like, I wasn't fully somehow doing something. And I felt a lot of frustration and I felt a lot of anger, not at you, but at the whole thing. I was just like I already do so much, like I work so hard in my career and also just in my life to be like a full balanced person and have a good relationship and do all this stuff. And then there's this other area that like, it feels hard. And it felt so foreign at that point. And again, it's not that I had never felt any connection to it, but it was just so far away. And I was like, how would I ever even begin to access that? It just feels, frustrating. So that's what came up in me at that time.
Yeah. Yeah.
I could hear the truth in what you were saying. And a part of me, again, did long for some more. It wasn't even about sex. It was about longing to feel more connected to myself, more alive, more connected to life, kind of, and not just like, sometimes I describe it as like life in black and white versus life in color, just when I was so in the go, 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 it was like, there was less access to, like you're saying, the senses or something. So I saw that in people and part of me longed for it, but I was just like, oh my God, another thing on my to-do list, basically.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times women feel like maybe there's something wrong with them. And, and what I'm sharing again is from my experience, and that is in all of our podcasts. I'm not predicting that everyone's the same, and that, it's up to you. But if you do have an interest or a curiosity, from my experience, is that when you open up to kind of opening up this part of yourself, and a lot of times people have trauma, they have all kinds of things around this. And that's where maybe we should talk about too. If you do, it's really good to get some kind of support to walk through this and talk through it. But for you, it was very much of an unwinding process. And that's what I often see in women is it's, you've been doing something for one way for so long, right? And like you said, it's like you forget, it's like, why would I do that? And so the first opening up to just aliveness and things like that and feeling more vitality, I think makes you more curious, right? And
I really like that about some of the things that I think you're going to share today about how is that you don't have to start with the sexual. You can completely set that aside for now if you want to, because it may feel super far away from where you sit right now. But if you ease into it with more of the aliveness and more of some of these other pieces we're going to talk about, then that just starts to open something up, and then desire builds, right?
Desire builds.
For more.
That's right on. Desire builds. And that's also, I think we talk about it in a few minutes, but, feeling more sensual and dressing prettier and, and allowing yourself to open up to the attention of, being more of a sensual being too, and, so I don't know.
And eventually you can, I think so. And eventually you can get support or even get support in the early stages, depending on where it is that you feel like you really need it. Sunny and I at one point hired someone to come in and actually work with us. And that was really, really great. It was like I had done a lot of the unwinding already through some of the things you're going to share about here. And then there just came a point where it was like, felt like we had gotten as far as we could get on our own, and it was better. It was, more connected and everything. But we were like, it'd be really great to get support. And that was fabulous. We had a great experience. It opened up a lot of new dimension there. So again, if you get really stuck in this, then that is something you can also do.
This is the first piece, even in my Secrets of Power couples that I work with couples, is their intimacy. It is the fuel for their relationship, and the deeper you can go with your partner, and, to be frank, the more orgasms you can feel and have as a woman, and the depth of orgasms, then you really unwind. It puts you out of control, which is a powerful thing for a woman.
Yeah, and so uncomfortable for someone like me who loves control. Oh, so good. All right. So what are some of the ways, again, that people can start to access this?
Well, we talked about the aliveness, right? And then also just connecting more to your senses and finding different ways to do that. It can be eating certain foods you love. I think about when I was in Hawaii and we lived on Keawakapu when Mariah was born, and we had a mango tree in our backyard. And I'd never really had mangoes. And when I discovered mangoes on Maui, I would pick those things off the tree, open them, and eat them in the backyard. And they were like this sensual experience, let me tell you, because I love mango. And it's so funny. My little grandson, Weston, the other day, his daddy gave him just the pit of the mango. And if you could have seen that kid eat that and just, suck on it and he spent so long. And he was the same thing. He was just in bliss. And those kind of experiences start to open up your senses. And the other thing for women is just hugely is slowing down. When you slow down and you savor instead of rush, when I always would tell the women, remember in the mastermind about putting on lotion, I said, do you wake up in the morning and go, here's my lotion? Or do you go, let me put on my lotion, and
for those of you who can't see her, she's very slowly putting lotion all over her body, imaginary lotion.
And learn to do breast massage and all of that, then what happens is something wakes up inside of you. And it can be, for me, music is a huge, huge, huge thing for me in terms of tapping into my sensuality and my creativity and everything. So finding your favorite music and stopping and taking it in fully. And, it can be spending time in certain environments. If you really love the beach, when I go to the beach, oh my gosh, I feel like, 5 times more sensual, and, wearing different clothes and walking and the air blowing through my hair. So what is that for you? And then the other thing is really creating beautiful environments to spend your time in, having those places in your home where you really feel, like it's like a beautiful palace for you, or that place where your altar, where you feel that, through growing up with me, Makena, I would put on my long dresses and get up in the morning and and I'd feel into the energy of moving in these dresses and lighting candles, enjoying different fabrics on your skin. And so there's so many ways.
I have to say that this is for some of you listening, this is going to be a remembering or returning to something. And for some of you, it's going to feel really foreign. Because to me, naturally, I would never think to do these things, right? It's just not so much in my natural makeup. I think anyone can access it. But if I think about you growing up, and you always created environments and played the music and stopped to do these things. And I was always more of a focusing on exactly what I was doing and what was in front of me kind of person. And I've opened up to it more and more, but I do have to remind myself a lot. It's not the natural go-to for me or the natural state. So just know that either way, that's okay. You don't have to judge yourself if that's wait a second, what? I would never even have thought about these things.
Right.
but set an alarm on your phone or do something to remind yourself like, hey, what's one thing I can do to feel more connected to my senses right now, right? Can I slow down and savor this food, like you're saying? Can I put on some music and light some candles? And I think of it almost as learning a foreign language for some of us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've led retreats for over 35 years. And when I used to do my Arts of Woman retreats all the time, we even did this in Costa Rica. I have the women bring their nice, beautiful get lingerie and they get to wear it. And, there's something that the women are just like, oh my gosh, something comes alive in them. Or you buy beautiful lingerie and you wear it under your clothes and you just feel a little bit more sensual and sexy that day. And, the other thing is some people tap into their sensuality when they're more in nature. They really feel, even being grounded and in the dirt. And so it's really about getting reconnected to your body and seeing what it is for you. And you have to explore if you don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So again, we talked about aliveness could be the first step. What are those things that bring you alive? Now we're talking about what connects you to your body and to your senses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like for me, as in the podcast that I did early in our podcast about my experience of, when women relax, they become wise, right? And that was my Thai massage experience in Thailand for the first time. And that was like, wow, it was a game changer for me in terms of opening up my senses, in terms of relaxing my body. Because again, sensuality comes from also, that relaxation, it also comes from, there's sexual tension, there's all kinds of sexuality. But for me, it's very much about that, finding ways to release and feel myself, So you have to think about what it is for you.
Yeah, that connects me more to my senses. I think it's a good question. Probably baths. Baths for me. I definitely food is an access point for me. Yeah. What else? I think things that make me slow down and like be present. So that could be, lighting candles and putting on music or taking a hot bath or whatever. Anything that I could like rush through or put on my to-do list is not going to be on that list. So like I want to say movement, but that could easily become, just busy and doing something that way. So yeah, I think that's some of the things for me. Mm-hmm. So what if we want to start to take this into the realm of more sexuality and that kind of turn on? Then what are some things that women can do there? It's like, I think this is kind of a choose your own adventure. Do you want to start with the aliveness and the sensuality piece, or do you want to go, more to the sexuality piece? Where are you now and what feels like an access point you can tap into, right?
Yeah. And one of the simplest practices is self-pleasure, and this is great whether you're single or in a relationship, because again, it all needs to start with you. I often see that women, when it comes to their sexual relationship, they're trying to please their partner and always say, please yourself first. And the more turned on you are, then your partner is going to feel like, okay, they're going to love this. Right. And, really one of the best sex coaches out there, Kim Anami, recommends self-pleasuring for 10, 15 minutes every day, because when you do this, you really stoke the fire. And she talks about even more. I actually started on her, her mentorship program. Yeah, yeah. And I decided not to complete it for certain reasons. But I have to say that her stuff is very, very kind of, what would you say, raw and real. But I do, she's absolutely right on that with the self-pleasuring. And when I was in her program and I really, really started to do this and I tried, I was like, oh my gosh, I remembered again, being single. Wow, I can feel my sexual energy again. So it's great to try this out, like even for 30 days. And it's a great little challenge you can do for yourself. Even if you're in a relationship, you don't even have to tell your partner. just start practicing. And then all of a sudden you're going to look different. You're going to feel different. I guarantee you it absolutely. Because you're waking up and shifting out of that kind of numbness. And the other thing too, if your sex life has gotten a little habitual, then waking your own self up like this and feeling turned on, it's going to make you feel more curious about life, about your partner, and even, about ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And the other thing to think about, right now is spring. And so that's awesome. A great time of year to wake back up again, because we're kind of thawing out from the winter, right? And if you're in a place that's really, really cold, it's that time of getting out, and it's for all of us, renewal and reinvention, rejuvenation.
Yeah. I love that. So you could kind of take any of these on as a 30-day challenge, right? You could
absolutely
do a tap into your senses challenge for 30 days, where again, every day you set an alarm on your phone or something, and you take 10 minutes or 20 minutes to do something that makes you feel connected to your senses. That's not about sexuality at all, if that feels like a place to start for you. Or you could do the self-pleasuring challenge, and do that with yourself. So again, lots of options here, lots of different pathways. Is there anything else that you'd suggest to our listeners apart from what we've talked about? What about women who are in a partnership and want to really, again, rekindle that spark with their significant other? Why is that important? It seems obvious to some people, right? But for some people, they're like, I don't know. We've been together forever. It might not be that important anymore.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to talk about men and women, because that's like in my power couple, that's who I work with. But this is any relationship, same-sex relationship. I believe that staying connected with your intimacy, like I talked about earlier, it builds a very deep bond, and intimacy is the bridge to strength and good health in a relationship. It's a place where when it's strong in a couple, you can actually see it. You can see the vitality in them. You can see the magnetism in both of them. There's something that is, you feel it, the energy of it. And for the intimate relationship too, honestly, it's really a place where men can really open their hearts, where they can kind of let their guard down. And of course, that's in a relationship where you're bonded and you've been together or together, right? And it's a place where women can go out of control, and which is super, super important for women. And it's super important over time to, again, as lovers, become better lovers for each other. So you can really, both of your man can be a better lover, and you can be a better lover. And through, as I always say, your relationship and intimacy should get better over the years, not become more numb and distant.
That's such a, would you say, counterintuitive, or it goes against what people typically say or believe, about relationships, is that that's just going to fade over time, and that's normal, and it's not a big deal, and so you're saying that the opposite can and should actually be true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because when intimacy falls in the wayside in a relationship for a long period of time, it actually brings tiredness into the body. They don't have the same kind of vitality and connection with the person they're living with. If you think about it, when you have an intimate relationship and you spend that time together, always couples say that, like, oh my gosh, when we do that, we do put that time into our calendars, then what happens is we think, oh my gosh, we should do this more often, right? And if they're not connected, then they just don't have that access to that restorative energy, because it is restorative, right? That energy allows a couple to really grow together. And, the other thing is, of course, it has ebbs and flows. It's not all wonderful and incredible sex all the time, or lovemaking. There are times when lovemaking becomes less frequent, or you start to feel a little bit more habitual. But that's also where I always encourage couples to have an element of surprise in their relationship. And then you can bring kind of fun back in and tap back into your sexuality. So it's not to try to say, okay, well, we're going to plan our lovemaking tonight and it's going to be wonderful. You start to reconnect with each other by touch or by dancing or something. And in that,
I want
what
to
you
say
do.
something.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I want to say something about the restorative. You said like the restorative energy or the tiredness. It made me think of like youthfulness, as a couple gets older, and how if they're not connected to this, that would age someone. And an interesting example that came to my mind was like when you see a couple that divorces, parts ways at some point, and then they go out and maybe one or both of them find a new partner. And then they tap back into probably their sexual connection, among other things, right? With this new person. It's new and it's fresh and it's exciting. And you see people look younger, right? You see them come alive again and be more vital. And it's like, that's not the only path to get there. You can do that within a relationship. Without that relationship, I mean, of course, there's many relationships that need to end or whatever, or it's better for the couple. But just to say that, like, that can happen within a relationship too, that you could rekindle and refine that spark. And that is a youthening, just to give another reason why it's important, right? It brings more youthfulness into each person and into them as a couple.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So any last things you want to share, Gigi?
I think another important point for women is it takes time to get fully turned on. So you have to find ways to carve that time out, and this can be a meeting with your partner in a hotel once a month, getting out of your environment, especially if you have kids. I have clients that do that and they meet in a hotel, and it doesn't mean that they don't make love at home, but they have that time when they get away from everything, and you go and you have room service, you drink champagne or whatever feels fun and sexy to you. Or maybe you go and you just do something really intense together. You go out, you drive fast cars or something and get your energy and adrenaline. That's for me, right?
That is not my access point. I'm like, wait, what? What does that have to do with anything?
Then you go home and spend the rest of the night in bed together or whatever, right? And then, also just weekly time that you set aside to have your time together, or maybe long massages, and each of you give each other a massage and 30 minutes each to really unwind and connect and really feel, how do you want to be touched, and talk about that. Or as I said earlier, dancing can be a very intimate and turn on thing with the right music, right? And because again, we lose that sometime when we've been with someone for a while and we don't do things like that. And those forms of play bring out a different side to ourselves, and also sometimes just a what would you say, a closeness, a bond, a familiarity or something, remembering times. And the most important thing is to have those regular intimate connection, a date night or something each week where you spend some time intimately, and ideally it's set a time that it's, hour, 2 hours, something like that, where you have time to really, really spend time together. And that can be love making the time, that can be dancing, taking a bath together, and then, having your time together. But that regular thing will start to, again, stoke the fire for both of you.
Yeah, that's been huge for us, is like, honestly, like putting it on the calendar. And that sounds like, oh, that's not so exciting or something like that. But it's just like having a block of time, 2 hours or something like that, where we know we're not going to be busy with other things or distracted. And we've had to experiment a little bit with this, because I think the idea is that you do date night, and we still love to do date night, but for us, we're tired after date night. Like we don't want to be intimate most of the time. So we've really experimented and found like morning is better for us. So we like to do like a weekend morning, which I know you've had clients that do that as well. So we can wake up slow and we can take our time. And of course, we don't have kids yet, but we've really talked about, of course, there will be ages and stages where this may not be as possible, but really hiring in somebody to come in on a weekend morning to allow us to continue to have that ritual, even if the kids are somewhere else in the house with the babysitter or whatever, or we have a family member come over or something like that, that gives us our time to really be with each other. And it looks a little different every time, sometimes we're talking for a while first or cuddling, sometimes we take a bath, sometimes, there's usually intimacy in there somewhere, but it is just having that like really time set aside to connect. That's been so pivotal for our relationship and really our, like you said, our bond, our relaxation together. It's really one of the things you've taught me over the years that I credit with just being a huge pillar of our relationship.
Yeah, I almost think the date night should be different than the sensual, sexual connection time, because it really, date night often, like you said, is going somewhere, doing something, doing it. And this is, you want to carve out that time where you really just have time for pleasure and connection and bonding, and you're in your space, if you set up your bedroom or wherever, and make it a beautiful time and space. And like you said, for a lot of people, it's mornings. Yeah. So you have to find that time of day. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, we know many of you are busy, but that's really, again, if you think about all the things we shared today in terms of how this impacts you, not only, in your connection with your partner and your bond over time, but also, just your health and your well-being and your feeling alive and in your senses and so many different things, your youth, is really why carving out some time is so, so, so important. We prioritize a million other things in our week, right? And think, oh, that has to happen. But for some reason, I guess culturally or something, we let this fall to the bottom of the priority list, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the main thing with this episode today, is just wanted to share a little of a perspective on this, and really because it's made a big impact for me personally, but also on our relationship and the way I feel and the way I move through my life. I'm so much more relaxed, I think, is one of the biggest things. And able to feel and sense life so much more. I know there's still a long way to go probably for me, because it's not the most natural thing in the world to feel connected to the senses in that way. But it's 10 times different than it was a few years ago when we were having that conversation. So
yeah. For our clients too. I've worked with many clients about this, and the change in their partnerships when they start to make this important. It's a game changer in terms of everything in their life and their business and everything.
Yeah, the ripple effect of that for couples in terms of everything, right? In terms of, like you're saying, their success in their business, their careers, their family dynamics. I mean, you really do see it. I see that in the clients that we work with and that we've really talked to about this, or you've worked with them over the years around this, is that, power couple is a great word for it, that this is one of the foundations.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Gigi, for sharing as usual.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for your good questions and for also sharing. Yeah.
All right, everyone. We will see you on the podcast next week. Thank you again. If you have anyone in your life that you think, you've been having this conversation in some way, shape, or form and really serve them, please pass it along. And if you haven't already, please rate the podcast, please subscribe, review, all the things. It really supports us continuing to bring this great content to you. Okay, see you next time.
Thank you.
That's our episode for today, but let's not make it the end of our love story. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast and think of some women in your life you'd love to share it with. And if you want to learn more about our events and programs, visit wayofthemuse.com. See you next time.